You're not being haunted. You're being timed. Your eyes snap open, and the room looks normal for half a second, and then the normal breaks. The air feels cold in your mouth like you inhaled metal. Your tongue is heavy, stuck to the floor of your jaw. You try to swallow, and nothing moves. You try to lift a hand, and your body doesn't answer, like someone cut the wire between intention and muscle. Then the pressure arrives. Not imaginary, not metaphorical. A dense weight on your chest, as if the mattress itself has risen to meet you, pinning your ribs from below. Your breath becomes small, trapped high in your throat. You try to inhale deeper, and your lungs refuse, and that refusal sends panic up your spine, like electricity. And then you feel it. A presence. Not a sound, not a voice. A shift in the atmosphere, like the dark has leaned closer and decided to stay. The doorway feels watched. The corner of the room feels occupied. The space above your body feels crowded by something you can't see, but somehow recognize. This is the moment most people make the same mistake. They believe the presence is the cause. They believe the presence came first, and the paralysis came second. But the truth is reversed. The paralysis comes first. The nervous system panics second. And the presence is what your mind builds third, because it cannot tolerate a fear that has no shape. That's why you've been told your whole life that if something attaches to you at night, it must be supernatural. That belief is wrong, because what attaches during sleep doesn't need claws to control you. It only needs access. And access opens during a narrow state when your body is locked in dream paralysis, but your mind wakes up enough to fear. In that state, fear doesn't stay inside you. Fear becomes architecture. It becomes a figure. It becomes a watcher. It becomes a ruler, an archon. Not because you're cursed. Because your brain is doing what it was trained to do, build a model of danger fast enough to survive. That's why the stories repeat across the world. Different languages, different gods, same report. Weight on the chest. Sensed presence. Intruder in the room. Suffocation. Terror. Paralysis. People call it the night hag, the incubus, the succubus, the shadow man, the attacker. Modern culture calls it sleep paralysis and tries to make it small. But your nervous system doesn't experience it as small. It experiences it as an ambush. Here's the twist that changes everything. The entity gains power in direct proportion to your reaction. The more you panic, the sharper it becomes. The sharper it becomes, the more you believe. The more you believe, the more you panic. It's a loop, and loops always feel like something is in control. So the question isn't whether Archons exist as literal beings. The question is why this presence appears at the exact moment your body can't move. And your mind can. Because once you understand the timing, you can break the attachment before it becomes a story you carry for years. You can remove it in 4 minutes. And the way you do it will feel almost offensive in its simplicity. You stop feeding it. To understand how this works, you have to stop treating sleep as a switch. Sleep is not a shutdown. It's a sequence. A slide through states. A dimming of one system while another system becomes dominant. You've felt this without noticing it. Those moments when you're falling asleep and your thoughts turn into images. When you're half dreaming before you're fully gone. That borderland is the place where your mind begins producing dream material, while a small portion of waking awareness remains. It's the place where logic loosens. Where images become louder than facts. Where emotion becomes more persuasive than reason. Most nights you pass through it like a tunnel and never remember it. But sometimes you wake up inside it. And when you do, the tunnel becomes a room. Your brain has a safety feature during deep dream sleep. When you dream, Your body is supposed to stay still, so you don't act out your dreams. So your brain applies a lock on your muscles, a kind of biological parking brake. It's protective. It keeps you from launching yourself out of bed while your mind is running. Sleep paralysis happens when your awareness returns before that lock turns off. So you're awake enough to register the room, but your body remains in dream safety mode. Now, add the second ingredient. The nervous system reads immobility as danger. In nature, if you can't move, something has you. Something is sitting on you. Something has pinned you down. Your brain evolved in a world where immobility often meant predation. So when you wake up and can't move, your system doesn't ask, "Is this neurological?" It screams, "Predator." And then your mind tries to explain the scream. Under stress, your mind doesn't choose the truest explanation. It chooses the most emotionally convincing one. It chooses the story that matches the intensity of the alarm. If your body is screaming, your mind assumes something outside you must be screaming too. So, it manufactures an intruder. That's why the presence doesn't feel like a random hallucination. It feels intelligent. It feels intentional. It feels like it knows exactly how to terrify you, because it was built from your own threat templates. This is the hidden mechanism most people never learn. The Archon is the name for a ruler, and the only thing being ruled here is your attention. Attention is the resource. Fear is the bait. And once fear gets baited, attention becomes a handle. Now listen closely to the most important part. The loop doesn't start at the presence. The loop starts at your strategy. Most people have the same instinct in these episodes: fight. They try to force movement. They try to shout. They try to jerk a limb. They try to break the lock like it's a prison door, and their willpower is a crowbar. That instinct is understandable, and it is exactly what makes the Archons stronger. Because fighting signals danger. Struggling is what prey does when it's being held. Struggling is what your nervous system interprets as an attack happening now. So the brain escalates the threat model. The hallucination sharpens. The pressure intensifies. The fear becomes a flood. The intruder becomes more real. That's why some people describe it as a full-body assault. Because the loop is being fed in real time. The way out is the opposite of what you want to do. You don't fight the lock. You change the state. And the only two levers you can reliably pull while your body is locked are breath and attention. Breath is not a spiritual slogan. Breath is a nervous system command. And when you exhale long, you send the clearest command you can send. The threat is decreasing. You don't need to believe that. Your body already speaks it. You just have to use it. Before we go to the 4-minute method, I want you to understand why this phenomenon feels so ancient, so archetypal, so mythic. Because it sits at the intersection of biology and meaning. Your brain is half dreaming and half awake. So the room is real, but the interpretation is dreamlike. That's why when you wake up paralyzed, the ceiling looks sharper, the shadows feel deeper, the silence feels like it's listening, and the presence feels like it has mass. It's because your perception is running on two operating systems at once. One system is reporting sensory reality. The other system is producing dream imagery and emotional narratives. And in that overlap, the mind's creations can appear to occupy the room. That's why so many cultures describe the same thing as a spirit attack. Because if you lived in a world without neuroscience, you'd call it the only thing that made sense. You wake up unable to move. You feel weight on your chest. You see a figure in the room. You feel terror like you've never felt. And then it stops. What else would you call that? Now I'm going to tell you a story that makes the mechanism undeniable. Because abstract explanation isn't enough. You need a moment you can feel. I'm 31. I live in Atlanta. I work as a software analyst. I'm the kind of person who thinks in systems. I don't believe in hauntings. I believe in bugs, patterns, and stress. I'm also the kind of person who sleeps badly. Too much screen time. Too much late work. Irregular hours. That feeling of falling asleep with your mind still running. And then one night, it happens. I wake up, and I can't move. At first, I think I'm dreaming. Then I realize I'm not. My eyes are open. I can see the edge of the dresser, the faint green lead on the router, the outline of a jacket hanging on the chair. The room is exactly my room. But my body is gone. That's what it feels like your body has been replaced by a statue. Then the chest pressure hits. It's not pain, it's weight. Like someone sat down on your sternum. My breath turns shallow. Panic spikes. My mind does what it always does, tries to solve. And in the solving, the corner of the room becomes occupied. Not visually at first, energetically. A certainty of presence. I try to shout. Nothing. I try to lift my arm. Nothing. And the presence gets stronger. Here's what made it terrifying. It didn't feel like a random fear. It felt like I had been caught. Like I wasn't supposed to be awake for this. My mind starts bargaining. Starts praying. Starts trying to remember rules from horror movies. Like the right phrase will make it stop. And in that panic, the figure becomes visible. A silhouette. Not detailed. Not a face. Just a density, like the dark learned to stand up. And then something in me snaps. Not courage. Clarity. Because I realize the presence is feeding on my reaction. I can feel it. The more my mind thrashes, the more the room warps around it. So I do the most unnatural thing. I stop trying to move. I stop fighting. I let the lock be there. And I exhale. Not a fast exhale. A slow, deliberate one. My inhale is small and involuntary. Fine. I don't force it. I let the inhale be small. And I make the exhale long. The pressure drops by 1%. That's all I need. Because 1% proves the loop is adjustable. So I do it again. Long exhale. The silhouette blurs. Again. Long exhale. The fear is still there, but it loses its teeth. Again. Long exhale. My fingers tingle like electricity is returning. My jaw loosens. My throat unlocks. I swallow. And the moment the body comes back online, the figure vanishes completely, like it never existed. I sit up gasping, sweating, heart pounding, staring at the same empty corner. And I realize something that changes how I view not just sleep, but life. The presence wasn't defeated by force. It was defeated by a state change. That's why the 4-minute method works. Because the Archon isn't a warrior you fight. It's a loop you stop feeding. Now let's pull back and get even more precise. In episodes like these, there are typically 3 layers. The physical layer, the paralysis, the chest pressure, the breath restriction, the buzzing, the tingling, the heaviness. The emotional layer, panic, dread, violation, helplessness, terror. The interpretive layer, the presence, the intruder, the entity, the watcher, the meaning your mind assigns. Most people try to fight the interpretive layer. They try to argue with the presence. They try to cast it out. They try to outthink it. But the interpretive layer is built on the emotional layer, and the emotional layer is built on the physical layer. So if you want to collapse the interpretation, you don't debate it. You calm the emotional layer by changing the physical layer. And the fastest physical lever you have is the exhale. Long exhale signals safety. Long exhale dampens panic. Long exhale reduces the brain's need to keep generating a predator model. And as the predator model weakens, the presence weakens. Not because it ran away, because it was never separate from your state. Now here's the question that always shows up. If it's just neurological, why do people across cultures describe it as spiritual? Because the state is spiritual in the original sense of the word. It's about breath. It's about the unseen. It's about the borderland between worlds. Your nervous system is not interested in your categories. It will produce experience that feels like revelation, whether you asked for it or not. And this is where the Archon idea becomes psychologically powerful. An Archon is a ruler, a governing force, a manipulator of perception. And the most manipulative force most people will ever encounter is their own fear, when it becomes convinced it's being watched. Fear makes you obey. Fear makes you bargain. Fear makes you outsource your authority. Fear makes you reach for external saviors. In that sense, the Archon is not only a bedtime phenomenon, it's a daytime phenomenon too, because the same mechanism that attaches in sleep also attaches in waking life. It attaches through attention. It attaches through loops. It attaches through the moment your nervous system gets hooked and your mind builds a story to justify the hook. Compulsive scrolling, catastrophic thinking, obsessive checking, intrusive thoughts, addiction, shame spirals. Those are Archons too. They rule you through reaction. Sleep paralysis is simply the purest version of the pattern, because your body can't distract you. Your only resource is attention. So the episode becomes a mirror that shows you how power works. Power doesn't always come from outside. Power comes from what you feed. Now we move into the practical core, the 4-minute removal method. I want you to understand why 4 minutes matters. Because your nervous system responds to rhythm and repetition. It responds to consistent signals. It responds to predictable sequences. If you try something for 10 seconds and stop, the system doesn't learn. If you do it for a few minutes, the system shifts. So the method is timed not because it's magic, because your body needs time to change gears. Here's the method, explained in the simplest possible way, so you can actually use it when you're terrified. Step 1. Stop struggling. The moment you realize you're paralyzed, you stop trying to move. You stop trying to shout. You stop trying to force. This feels impossible, because panic wants action. But action is the fuel. Struggle makes the loop stronger. So you do the most counterintuitive thing. You become still on purpose. Step 2. Pick one anchor. You choose one tiny sensation you can still feel. Tongue behind teeth, air at nostrils, weight of hands, pressure of head on pillow. You hold that sensation like it's a rope. This gives your attention a job that isn't fear. Step 3. Long exhale. You don't force the inhale. You let the inhale come when it comes. And you make the exhale longer, slow, deliberate, like draining a tank. You repeat it. This changes the panic chemistry. Step 4. Remove the name. You stop calling it demon, Archon, intruder, watcher. Naming gives it identity. Identity gives it power. So you call it one word: signal, signal. This tells your mind you're not in a supernatural war. You're in a state shift. Step 5. Reclaim without aggression. You say one sentence inside your mind: this is my state. I remain. Not as a challenge, as a fact. And you keep the long exhales. That's it. That's the entire method. Now let me show you how it works in real time in your body. In the first minute, stopping struggle prevents escalation. It stops the loop from tightening. In the second minute, anchoring attention reduces the mind's need to scan for danger. In the third minute, long exhales lower the alarm signal. In the fourth minute, removing the name strips the presence of personality, and the reclaim statement restores your authority. When you do all of these together, the system has nothing left to feed on. The presence can't sharpen. The fear can't climb. The loop can't sustain itself, and the lock turns off. Sometimes your body unlocks suddenly, like a switch. Sometimes it unlocks gradually, tingling, jaw loosening, fingers twitching, breath deepening. Either way, it ends. Now, you might be thinking, what if I do it and it doesn't end? Then you do it again, because the goal is not to win once. The goal is to train a reflex so strong that the loop rarely fully forms. This is the difference between a person who gets one episode and never again, and a person who gets episodes repeatedly. The difference is not luck. It's what they do in the first 10 seconds. Those first 10 seconds decide whether you feed the loop or starve it. And now, you know what to do, but we're not done. Because if we stop here, you'll have a tool, but you won't have the deeper transformation. The deeper transformation is this. Once you learn to break the Archon loop at night, you begin to notice where it attaches in the day. You begin to notice how fear recruits attention. You begin to notice how attention gives power to thoughts that were never true. You begin to notice how certain feelings become rulers simply because you react to them. And you start to reclaim your mind, not by positive thinking, by state control. This is where ancient practice and modern understanding meet. Some traditions trained lucid awareness in dreams. They treated dreams as practice for awareness itself. They taught people to recognize images as images, to remain present as the dream shifts, to stop being thrown around by fear. In modern terms, that is the skill of meta-awareness. Awareness of awareness. The ability to witness a state without merging with it. And that skill is exactly what breaks sleep paralysis. Because the moment you witness the state, you stop being ruled by it. You stop being prey. You become the observer. Now, let's address a fear that many people have, but never say out loud. What if the presence is real? What if there is something? If that's true, then the method still works. Because even if a presence exists, it still requires one thing from you: attention. No matter what you believe, attention is the currency. So a method that restores your attention is still the correct defense. That's why I'm not asking you to believe or disbelieve. I'm asking you to become skilled. Belief doesn't help you in paralysis. Skill does. And the skill is simple. Anchor. Long exhale. Signal. Remain. Now we're going to deepen the script with an immersion section, because I want you to feel the difference between feeding and not feeding. Imagine you wake up locked tonight. You open your eyes. The room is dim. The shadows are thick. Your heart jumps. You feel the pressure. Your old self panics. Your old self tries to fight. Your old self thinks something is here. That thought alone is gasoline. Now imagine a different response. You notice the lock and you think, state, just that word, state. You feel your tongue behind your teeth. You focus on that sensation. Then you let your exhale lengthen, not forced, slow, as if you're fogging a mirror with calm. You hear your heartbeat in your ears. You let it be. You refuse to name the presence. You don't deny it. You don't worship it. You don't bargain with it. You label it, signal, and you remain. In that moment, you have done something radical. You have refused to give your nervous system a predator story. You have refused to give fear a throne. And without the throne, the Archon cannot rule. The pressure eases. The corners of the room return to being corners. The air returns to being air. And your body unlocks like a door that was never bolted, only held by tension. That is what freedom feels like, not fireworks. Relief. Now we need to talk about why some people keep getting episodes. Because if you're listening to this, there's a good chance it's happened to you more than once, or you're afraid it will. Episodes are often triggered by lifestyle factors that destabilize sleep: irregular schedules, stress, sleep deprivation, sleeping on the back, certain medications, heavy alcohol, intense anxiety. But underneath those triggers, the deeper issue is this: your nervous system is carrying too much charge. And charge looks for release at the borders. Sleep is a border. So one of the best things you can do is not only learn the 4-minute removal method, but reduce the charge that makes the doorway open in the first place. This is not a lecture on perfect sleep hygiene. This is one practical suggestion. If you get frequent episodes, build a closing ritual before bed. Not a mystical ritual, a nervous system ritual. Dim the room, cool the temperature slightly, reduce screen brightness. Spend 4 minutes doing the method before sleep as practice. Anchor, long exhales, signal, remain. This trains the pathway before the episode happens. It makes the response automatic. And when the response becomes automatic, the loop has less chance to form. Now, I want to address the emotional core. People don't talk about sleep paralysis because it's embarrassing. It feels childish to say, "I woke up and something was in the room." It feels like superstition. So people stay silent. And silence makes it worse. Because silence makes you think you're alone. You're not. This is one of the most widely reported human experiences across cultures, for a reason. Because the brain state exists for everyone, and the fear template is universal. Which means the solution can be universal too. You're not broken. You're not chosen. You're not cursed. You're experiencing a doorway that the human nervous system is capable of opening. And now you have a key. Now we move into the final integration, where the hook resolves into a calm truth. You're not being haunted. You're being timed. The timing is that narrow doorway where dream paralysis and waking awareness overlap. The attachment is the fear loop that forms when you identify with the threat model your brain generates. The removal is not combat. It's state shift. So tonight, you practice for 4 minutes, even if nothing happens. Because you're not practicing for terror. You're practicing for sovereignty. And when the doorway opens, if it ever opens again, you won't be surprised. You won't bargain. You won't plead. You won't thrash. You'll breathe. You'll anchor. You'll label it signal. And you'll remain. And the Archon will lose its handle. Here is the practice one more time, slow enough to remember. Pick your anchor. Lengthen the exhale. Label fear as signal. Remain. 4 minutes. That's the entire escape, not because you forced anything. Because you stopped feeding what was feeding on you. And if you want a final thought to carry into sleep, let it be this. A doorway isn't a monster. A doorway is a test of attention. And attention is yours. I am calm in the doorway. I hold my attention steady. I leave with my breath.